if someone who is born in this continent goes there, probably won't survive in that environment. Their skin becomes darker and darker, okay? It gets darker and darker. They stay there, they reproduce there, and the next offspring when they're born, they still have the same skin color like the parents had, both white parents, okay? They adopted, their skin became brown, you call it tanning, okay? Skin became tan. When they come back, skin slowly becomes white again. What does it call? Is it called natural selection? Is it called adaptation?
That's talking about it's
you know,
of generations. It's like
okay,
Australia.
I give you 1 million years.
Australia was there
How
for
much
a couple
time do you
years.
want? How much time do you want?
Over millions of years.
Okay, I give you 1 billion years. So they go there, their skin starts to become darker. 2 white human beings, okay? Their skin becomes darker under the sun. New offspring is produced. They still take parents' genes and they're white.
Yeah, they're white. Yeah.
Right? They stay under the sun, their skin becomes darker. When they reproduce, next offspring is still white. Yes. Given 1 billion years, they will produce black offspring. Is that what you're telling me?
No.
For 20 years, you're projecting into the future. I'm giving you an example of how we can see
What?
today.
You are doing it from the word go to the future anyway.
No, I'm not giving anything about it. I'm telling you how it can happen.
So are
today
you
right
going
now.
backwards
Can I just finish what I'm
in your
saying?
theory?
I'm giving you an example of artificial selection. We do it all the time. We choose the cow that produces the most milk. That's artificial selection.
But cow remains the
cow's
cow.
changed.
Cow does not change
I
into a horse.
I know.
Yes.
We've domesticated cows for about 10,
Yeah, I know
20,000
that.
years
You
max.
don't have to tell
It's
me
not a
cow
long
gives
time.
milk. I know that. You can
No,
take
I said we've
it
domesticated
as a given.
I know, we've domesticated the cow for only about 10,000, 20,000 years. Okay, it's not a long time. Likewise, human beings, some of them, especially in the northern regions, they've adapted to be able to digest milk. A lot of humans can't digest it as well in the east. That's a mutation. It occurs and it changes over time. It means that those people that can digest milk are more able to survive. That's why they did survive in those regions. My point is today, a lot of Asians in
Do
South
they
Asia,
become something other than human beings?
no, because it takes
No,
millions
thank
of years.
you. So how does your theory work where one species transforms into the other? I still don't
Mutations that
understand.
occur over thousands of years, you add them up.
Not just mutation,
add
a
them up.
positive mutation, according to you.
Yeah, obviously if it's not positive, they'll die out. Because
Well,
they're
there
not
is no
natural.
example of positive mutation so far.
They're all positive because if it's not positive, you won't survive in the environment that you're in.
Well,
the mutation has to adapt
in
due to the
theory,
environment.
in theory,
That's
what
how
you're
it
saying,
works.
maybe it's positive, but practically we haven't seen any example of any
No,
positive
I'm
mutation.
positive mutation because I've got light-coloured skin because I live in a northern clime. I originated from creatures that started off in Africa who had dark skin.
Come on.
Because we migrated out of Africa to places where there's less sunshine.
You have checked all your ancestral history.
No, this is natural selection. We were selected for having
Were you
lighter
still a
coloured
human
skin
being at
so
that
that
time?
we
Were
can
you still a
absorb
human
more
being?
sunlight.
Sir,
Yeah?
I'll save you some time.
Yeah.
Were you still a human being at that time? Yes.
Which time?
Are you when you had a darker skin?
Yes, I evolved.
Are you
from
still a human being?
Yes.
Thank
I
you.
mean, it's
Come back to your
it's
point.
debatable.
Coming back to your
It's
point.
debatable at what point in evolution
sorry, I'm in a conversation.
you give a speech. Well, you asked me a question.
Okay.
Yes,
I'll take the
well,
question
let me
back.
give you
Can I
the
have a
answer.
conversation,
No,
please?
you've asked me the question.
Sorry, my fault.
You might
I
learn,
apologize. I
You
asked
might
you a question.
learn
I'll
something.
take it back.
Try and learn something. Try and learn something.
Thank
Listen
you,
to me.
thank you.
Try and listen to me.
Thank you. If
Listen.
I want to learn
Just let him finish his
about
point.
adaptation, I'll come to you. Right now we're
Let
discussing
me
something.
finish
just
his point. You
finish
asked me,
my
right?
point because you
Sir,
asked
I
me a
respect
question.
you, you're older than
You
me. I just wanna have a
clearly
Finish his
don't
point, you asked me a
respect.
question.
No, you don't
Thank you.
respect me.
Point.
You're not interested in learning.
No, I'm not.
Carry
Thank
on.
you. I'm not. Thank you. Yes.
Look,
you for
my
trying.
point. Let me just say this. I'm sure, from what I've explained, that you agree with artificial selection because we have cows, we have goats, and we've bred
Okay, I'll
ourselves.
tell you what I agree
Then
with. You don't have to put your words in my mouth.
Okay, look, do you agree that we've chosen certain animals that have characteristics that we enjoy and we like and we need to survive? Is that
Within
fair
the
statement?
same species, probably, yes.
Okay, within the same time, within the same
Yeah,
species, yeah,
fine.
okay.
No problem.
Now, have those animals changed visibly from their wild ancestors?
Of course not. Cow remains the cow. Still the same animal.
You've got wild bison in North America. They're very different to wildebeest in the African Serengeti.
Exactly.
They're very different.
But wildebeest is the wildebeest. Wild bison is the
I know,
wild
but
bison.
they're
I
the
don't
same
know.
genus, okay? They're the same genus.
Well,
similar,
you have
okay?
40%
They're
the same
ruminants.
gene as cucumber. I don't know what you're talking about, mate. What's wrong with you?
The gene. Okay, you don't need to be insulting, man.
What's wrong
The
with
genus
you?
is the same. I didn't say the genetic.
Well, you have the same genes, up to 40% like a cucumber. You know that.
The genus, not the genes. The genus of the animal, the ox, okay? You have different wild ancestors of these different animals that we have, like
Give an example of cat family, for example. It's
Yeah,
much
like the
closer.
canine
Yeah,
family. It's very close
yeah,
to,
but
say, the
cat
wild
remains the
ancestors.
cat, lion remains the lion.
Okay,
Yeah.
can I finish my point about the fact that animals change, and they've changed because we changed them, because they have characteristics that we like?
No, I haven't seen a lion become.
Okay, thank you.
Do you agree based on what, sir?
We've changed.
Animals, they're
No,
manipulating
but
animals. They're
we're
manipulating breeds.
not discussing.
Genes. You're talking about genes.
We are not discussing animals for example, cow starts giving more milk, etc. We're not
Yes,
discussing. We're discussing cow becoming something
No,
else,
no, on this
given
one,
enough
no.
time.
I'm
Changing the
starting-
gene of the
look,
same
I'm
cow.
having-
changing
I'm
the
You're not
gene of the-
changing.
trying to-
You're
I'm
not
getting
changing
there.
sexual gene. You're changing the
I'm
somatic
giving
gene,
you the-
and it does not
Can I give
produce
you-
a different
Can I
species.
give-
This is the whole
can I just
point.
give you the narrative because you're not understanding what I'm saying. I'm trying to help you understand.
No, I do understand what you're saying.
You're not
What-
because you're not understanding what I'm saying. You keep saying, why has the species changed?
So you already know what I know. What did I have in breakfast this morning?
You asked me. Come on, let me just finish my point. I've let you speak a lot. Let me just finish the point.
Okay,
about
go
this,
ahead.
okay?
Go ahead.
We change animals, agricultural animals. The cow, a wild ox, does not look like a dairy Jersey cow. They look
Agreed.
very different. The dairy cow takes all its energy and produces milk, and it's quite skinny and very lean. And a bison on the North American plains, it's very thick, it's got loads of fat content, doesn't produce a lot of milk. A big difference over 20,000 years. That's called artificial selection. That cow can't survive without human beings. It has a relationship with them. If it's out in the cold, in the freezing cold, it doesn't have any hair on it.
You don't
it will
need to
die.
explain to me the history of cows. I know that.
but I'm trying to clarify.
Just
it
come
you.
to a point.
I'm trying to show you the different changes. That's my point. That's the thing you don't understand. The point is,
Does that cow remain the cow?
the cow isn't adapted to survive without human beings. That's
Yes.
the process of natural
Does-
selection. It's
Does
artificial though. in this
bison
case.
remain bison?
No, they're the same,
Yes or no?
they're the same species
Yeah.
already. My point is that there's not enough differentiation, but you can see the drastic differentiation.
Okay, I'll
between
give
the
you
groups.
much closer
Can I just
species.
finish the
Lion, cat family.
just finish the point
You have a
about-
cheetah and a cow
Let me just
and
finish
a
the
cat.
point so I can tell you how the species does change over time.
No, you don't need to tell me, my friend. Okay? Well,
You
I'm
asked me how does the
Well,
cow
you're
change
trying
the-
past 2 hours, it's not working. I'll tell you why. Because what you are speaking about is the somatic changes in the genes. It does not reproduce a different species unless your sexual part
I'm
of the
trying to
genes
show you
is
how.
changed.
No, that you're wrong in that.
And you haven't given
Let
me any
yes, I'm
example
giving you
where
now.
sexual part of the
I'm
genes
telling
has
you,
changed.
That's
to
not the way it
produce a
works.
different species.
That's not the way it works. It's not
This is the only way it can work. There is no
No,
alternative
no,
unless you
no.
come up with something, an alternative to a science which has to be
You just
faith-based
let me
anyway.
finish the point about the animals that we have, okay? So you can understand how selection works, how natural or artificial selection works. So you can see that these are mutations that occur after the organism reproduces itself. DNA doesn't reproduce perfectly, okay? There can be little nicks and mistakes here and there that may or may not make an animal more adapted to its environment. That's my point. When that occurs, the animal that is more adapted to its environment will survive, okay? And it will pass on that
Who's
mutation.
disagreeing with that?
You
What
agree
I'm
with that?
disagreeing, you are saying one animal didn't survive, the other did.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Why does it?
No one disagrees with
Because
that.
of a genetic difference that makes it more adapted, yeah?
Doesn't matter
That's
what.
only in a very
It could be
limited
genetic, could be
environments.
physical
When you have
differences,
mutations,
which
only in
comes
very
through
limited
genetics anyway.
environments.
What
Like
we're
some
saying
fish
is,
losing their eyes in caves.
what you can't
There's
show
not
is
evolution.
one
That's just
animal
animals losing their sort of, a bit of their
transforms into
DNA.
the other given enough time according to your
specialised for
theory.
a very
If they are
localised
separate
environment.
animals,
Can, because
so
that's
this
not
is
a good
if you
example
dominate
of
the-
evolution.
so don't go back to saying two separate species survive. Stick to the point that one species transforms into the other given enough time. This is what we were discussing. No one is disagreeing
is the thing
with
that
two separate species surviving.
the idea that we've created to categorize nature and all of its different parts doesn't mean it exists in nature. I'm trying to show you that an animal can change into a different animal through the process of
But you haven't
culminating
showed me
mutations. I'm trying to explain to you, but you keep interrupting me, my friend. So just let me finish the point.
Okay, how much time do you
I
how
just
much
need 2
time?
minutes. If you don't interrupt me-
I'll zip. How
Yeah.
much time do you need
give
to
me-
show me one species transforms
Yeah,
into
just
the other?
2 minutes, okay?
2 minutes.
Just
there
2
you
minutes,
go.
okay? So we have the process of artificial selection, okay? We choose the cow, we choose whatever it is. If that animal is left in the wild, it will die because it's adapted to survive with human beings, okay? Now, if you have another animal in nature that is more adapted to, say, I don't know, another organism because of a change in an environment, it survives in that new environment, it will reproduce itself over time. It will prosper, the other animal won't because the environment has changed. There is a genetic difference between that animal and the other animal already through the process of natural selection. Now this new animal that survived in this new environment, when it reproduces itself, it doesn't reproduce itself perfectly. There can be little nicks in the DNA code through the sexual process. When different DNA merges together, you produce the same animal, but there may be some differences. There may be some mutations.
Give an
Now,
example.
let me just
Sorry, give
finish,
an example of
I'll ask for
animal.
2 minutes. Ask for just 2 minutes, okay? That change in the DNA, okay, that is continuously passed on. And as they continue reproducing, you'll have more and more mutations. We're talking about thousands and thousands of generations of different animals. And when we're talking about 1,000,000 years, these mutations add up and can be quite significant, along with the process of a changing environment that facilitates the process of natural selection. You can get a change of a kind, a change from one species to another through that process. To me, that makes sense. I hope it makes sense to the people who described it well, but that's the idea behind it.
I read that
It's not rocket
definition in
science,
Science
okay?
magazine already. My question was very simple, which you haven't answered. Give me an example of one species transforming into the other. What you have given me is a theory which just you had your 2 minutes. Just
ask me for human beings. Yeah?
Just
ask me for an example.
You had your 2 minutes. Just listen to me now, please. Yeah. Just listen to me now. You gave me a theory, okay, or a definition of so-called Darwinian evolution, whatever it may be. Okay. You said you have one species that did not survive in a specific environment, you had another species that survived in a specific environment. I already said before you gave me this textbook definition that I don't disagree with that. What I disagree with when you say the surviving species, given enough time, can transform into a different species. So for example, a cow can transform into a lion, for example, okay? Right? Well, you can use whatever two different examples, I don't mind. You can use a hyena and an elephant, I don't care. Okay? One species which is a distinct species transform into another species which is a distinct species. Okay? I am saying the only way it can happen is when you have changes in the sexual DNA part of the cells, okay?
What do you mean by the sexual DNA part of the cell?
Okay.
I understand this, yeah.
You know the process when you reproduce, you have somatic cells. If any change that happens in somatic cells, new species does not come out. The only way you can have new species is when is the change in the sexual cells, not the sexual part of the cells.
Yeah, I don't
okay?
agree with that. I think that's wrong.
Okay, give me an example. Okay, so nothing changes. Let's say human beings, when they reproduce, we have X and Y chromosomes.
So you think mutations can't occur?
I don't think you. I think you just brushed everything under the carpet.
No,
what I
what was
said.
your point? You said you can't change.
I haven't made a point. So if you allow me to finish, I'll make a point and then you can respond to it. Okay? So my question to you was, give me an example of one distinct species transforming into another distinct species.
Okay, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Homo neanderthalis, Homo forensiensis. There's a lot of animals that have changed that have led to human beings.
Okay, you have one fossil which for one species, you have another fossil for another species. Where is the transformation? It's like, let's say for example, you have a cow and you have a goat. Cow gives milk, goat gives milk. Yeah. Differences in sizes, two separate species, okay? Give me an example of a goat transforming into a cow or vice versa through whatever process you want to adopt. I don't care.
An example of an animal changing to another animal.
Yes.
First of all,
this is what we're discussing. We're not discussing one species getting instinct, other species surviving. We're not discussing that. No one disagrees with that. Okay? We know when meteors came in, dinosaurs were extinct. That's the theory at least. And there are species that survive. So no one's disagreeing with that. What we're disagreeing is one species transforming into the other given enough time according to your theory.
Yeah.
That can only happen when there is a change in the DNA and not just every part of the DNA is only the sexual cells. Okay?
Let me just make something clear.
Otherwise, you will not have a different species from two specific species.
Okay, let me make something clear.
Can you answer that question?
Yeah, I'm answering.
Yeah.
It's not a straightforward answer, so I have to give you something like a minute or two. It's not a clear-cut thing where you say the animal is going to change today from this into that. That's why I have to give you the example of the mutations that occur over a couple of generations. The point is, you don't have a change of a species in one day or 1 year or even 100,000 years. It can take millions of years for these things to change. My point is the culmination of these mutations over time leads to the change in the species.
You have already said that. Can you answer my question?
I
please?
answered it. That's it.
No, you gave me a textbook definition from a science magazine. I put it to a specific test. Give me another science book. What I asked you is, I gave you a specific.
Dinosaurs to birds. What do you want?
Okay, give me an example.
Dinosaurs to birds. Okay, we have good fossil records of the dinosaurs and how they actually.
Hyenas to human beings. That doesn't make any sense.
Hyenas and human beings.
Well, you said dinosaurs to birds. I said football to human beings or cucumbers to human beings.
That happened. They're the
well,
same.
show. Give me the evidence.
The fossil records are there.
Fossil records are for two separate species. They're beaks. And all that one species transforms into the other. I make this bold statement. You have zero fossil records. Zero. In Hindi, you call shunne, right? Shunne.
There are tons and tons of fossil records that prove these animals have
four separate species. Give me
separate
transformation from one
You
to the
cannot
other.
observe a change of an animal to another animal. Hope you
So,
understand
so
that.
you have
So to use that as an argument,
snakes with wings and flying.
you cannot observe a snake today changing into a lizard tomorrow. You cannot do that.
But you
Human
should have the
beings
records.
cannot-
You should have the you should have the fossil records to be able to do that.
Yeah,
If macroevolution is true, you should have the fossil records. They don't exist.
The fossil records do exist.
They do not.
They
Okay.
do exist.
Okay.
So how would you describe these
so
records?
let's understand. So you have fossil record of dinosaur, and you have fossil record of bird. If the transformation from dinosaur to bird is true, where is the fossil record in between for the
You
transformation?
have the intermittent creatures that came in between that period of time.
So-
They actually exist. I'm not a professional or a scientist in this field.
Okay,
but
I'm
I've seen
gonna save you
images
some
and
time here.
fossils.
I'm gonna save you some time
We're
here
gonna-
and
you're
save
gonna
my
walk
time.
away, yeah?
I'm gonna walk away because
Because you don't believe they exist, these fossils.
no, because
You don't
what
believe they exist.
no, because
I think any rational person will
Can
know
I
that
tell
there
you what I
there's a
believe?
whole field of paleontology where people are discovering new things every single day.
Yeah,
So to
I-
argue that these fossil records don't exist is just feigning ignorance.
I didn't say fossil records don't exist. I said fossil records to support your theory that one species transforms into the other.
That's it.
Filling in the gaps don't exist. Zero.
Filling in the gaps.
You are telling me one species can transform into the other given enough time. I made a bold statement. You have
Yeah,
zero
very bold.
fossil records to prove that. Unless I have this internet here, you show me fossil records of any species that existed previously transformed into the other species with every single fossil record
There
in
are
between.
diagrams in there, man. I'll have to show you. Just type it in. Type in evolution and you'll see.
You do it, please. So you're showing me.
I don't. Fine. Everyone's seen these images before. I mean, you don't have to show people.
No, but I'm consider me as illiterate.
okay, fine.
As compared to you, I want to see. So you're showing me fossil records from one species transforming into the other. Don't bring me Australian and Pakistani cow with milk differences, please. Okay? Because I already know that, and you have been arguing for the past 3 hours exactly the same.
Okay, this is a classic image. It may not be 100% factually correct, but it proves that. This is an image of how the human beings have.
Yeah, well,
Do you think people?
Nice image.
Bro, have a
Okay, wait, do you think people? He walks away at that point. That actually was an image
Yeah.
of different creatures: Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Homo fransiensis. He believes that that's a picture. That is based on the actual fossil evidence. People don't just create these animals out of nowhere. These animals exist, and they have existed. And to say, no, sorry,
A priori assumption.
to say,
It's
no,
based on a priori assumption of what's happened.
to say, sorry, to argue, to say that these
Yeah.
animals that have existed, and we know have existed based on the fossil records, they are insignificant as to our previous history, our evolutionary history. They're insignificant. To argue that, I find is just either you're feigning ignorance or it's just disingenuous. Because at the same time, you can either say that these aren't significant because I don't believe they are, or you can say that God created us. And it's your choice to choose which one. You can have both, but to say that that idea is that these animals are so insignificant, all these fossils have been put there for no reason at all, to say that and say it's not significant, and then to walk away like that and not finish the debate, it shows me something actually. It shows me that you don't want to look at the evidence. Because as soon as I put a picture up that shows the actual progress of how human beings have ancestors that have existed, like Homo habilis, like Homo erectus.
It's showing us
okay?
that
They
the
exist.
opinion of some people. It shows some atheists what they believe happens. But even early in the argument, you couldn't really come up with a valid argument for the mechanism of macroevolution. You said mutations. Mutations by their very nature are harmful.
No, they're not. No, they're not. That's why I disagreed. I'll tell you why.
Okay,
You
sorry,
see,
I must have misunderstood, sorry.
Because there's no such thing as a harmful mutation. Because if there was, it would not exist. The animal would not exist because it cannot survive in the environment. Because the only thing that works is the mutation that
Okay,
is
that's not
adapted
true.
to its environment.
No, that's not
no,
true.
it's very true.
I'll tell you what it's like. I'll give you
go
two
ahead.
examples.
Go ahead.
One, you've got in caves, you've got fish which live in caves.
Yeah, they're blind.
Total darkness.
Yeah.
They go blind, their eyes obviously atrophy over generations and go.
Because they don't need them.
But in normal,
That's the
in normal
beauty of
life,
it. They don't need them.
in normal life,
If you're a fish in the cave and you're blind, why would you use the energy to supply those cells with the different sources of energy they need to survive? Why?
So far, we're in absolute agreement. So far, we're in absolute agreement. But that genetic, all that genetic coding for eyes to use them, if that cave opened up for some reason, for sake of argument, they wouldn't be able to get their eyes. They wouldn't be able to get
They
their
would
eyes back.
die. You're
The
absolutely
genetic
right.
mutation
They
is
would go
gone.
extinct.
Another example of genetic
But that's the process of life. That's how nature changes and accumulates.
Another example of genetic mutation would be like with sickle cell. Some people have sickle cell anemia, many athletes, for instance. By some sort of stroke of fate, people who have that gene or have the recessive gene, they have a high tolerance to malaria, like plasmodiums, the different species of malaria. Okay, so that mutation does give them some little bit of advantage, but at what costs? yeah, having that sickle cell sort of gene, it's a pretty gene. It's not these mutations he's referring to. It's a bit like having with a program, having little kinks in a program which develop over generations for that program. It's not a good vehicle to use as the proof. This is how we have evolved. This is how nature has evolved. How animals have evolved.
I'm not saying that I know exactly where we came from. What I'm saying to everyone here generally is that there are these fossil records that exist, and we have to understand them. If scripture, religious scripture, does not show us what they mean, then what do we do? Do you want us to ignore them? But that's the evidence. The beauty of science is that it changes over time. That's the thing about it. Okay. You don't have a one set belief. It can change. If there is a inconsistency.
I don't know what you agree with me, but no one would dispute those fossils are fossils. That there was this hominid type species. There was this.
No, some people do dispute that. Unfortunately, they say it's the same species. Yeah, it's Homo sapiens, but they've misclassified it. And the truth is, there may be misclassifications here and there, but the fact that this is a different organism that is very similar. It's a hominid. It's a bipedal organism.
Sorry, I butted probably into your argument.
Not at all. I haven't said anything.
It's fine. It's fine. The other gentleman walked away. So
okay, but basically, all of us are coming from an a priori assumption. So you either assume there is no God, and therefore we've come out around.
I'm not saying I'm an atheist. No. I said there's no evidence for.
I just use it as an example. Everyone is of an atheistic or agnostic bent. You are, by your very nature, going to have an a priori assumption that there's been no supernatural involvement, how we've come about, and therefore you've got to find some other alternative to that.
I try not to because you can't evidentially prove it, but at the same time I'm not saying that it doesn't exist. I just say it's not the terrain of science to discuss things about God or religion because they're not evidentially proven. Some people may not agree with me. A lot of atheists will say no, science is the only thing we need. I'm saying no, it's not. But the idea to say that this is the case 100% is very, very unhumbling and unbefitting of someone who's religious, because the whole point is to humble yourself in line of the fact, in lieu of the fact we have so many things that we don't understand, we don't know. Science is the only thing, well, one of the only things actually, that can actually help us traverse this terrain and understand it. It's reductionist by its very nature, yes, but at the same time it helps facilitate our understanding. Sure, religion does as well in its own sense, but to say that, evolution doesn't occur because somehow you believe that God created us individually, no, that's not fair, because you have to look at it as an impartial observer. That's what science does.
But you've got some underlying philosophies which are guiding you. Therefore, it's not necessarily as
like what, for example?
Well, you already mentioned reductionists, for instance, and so forth. So you already have those underlying assumptions. I'm not saying you're being dishonest or anything. I'm just trying to say they are there, and we as human beings we love to pretend that we're totally sort of impartial, that we can sort of look at the facts and not be persuaded by any sort of our background, our education, what we believe or don't believe. It's all going to be there. So
you're right. I agree with you.
You've got the fossil records. You've got the different disputes about how old this rock is, how old that rock is, how it's come about, so on and so forth. And we like detectives. We have to put it together. If we like detectives, we have to have some sort of framework to work out how does it come about. So if you come back, if you're from a sort of theistic background, like Muslim or Christian or Jew, as an example, you're going to believe that yes, it was God who ultimately created the universe, and therefore it's God ultimately behind it. Even from an agnostic or atheistic bent, it's going to be on the other side. By your very nature, you're going to try and say, well, I want to be impartial, therefore I won't include God. I've seen that with the American, like you've got the I've actually seen that with one of the big American scientific website, which is open to all people to look at. They often cover the issue of creationism and sort of science, religion, and so forth. And they said, we must be impartial, how we look at facts, therefore I'm paraphrasing what I'm saying, it's a bit unfairly, therefore we'll exclude theistic viewpoints. That's been a bit
I'll tell you why I think that's fair, because if it's a scientific organisation, my opinion is, and I think it's true, science cannot prove or disprove the existence of God. That's a fact. So it's on the terrain of science to say what does or does not exist.
Okay, so why is it fair to say that you won't have theistic, you will not sort of listen to a theistic answer, but you'll listen to an atheistic answer? Isn't there already a problem there with the underlying assumption?
Because most of our society is organised around science and the fact that we can prove something, as we say, that's just the way things are. And if you're dealing with nature, for example, you're dealing with engineering or building or physics or mathematics, whatever it is, you need a framework, and science is that framework. Theology is different. It has its own terrain. So that's fine. I personally don't subscribe to that.
Okay, but that's an artificial distinction. So you're making an artificial distinction between belief and reason. That's, I think, was one of David Gold, the late atheistic philosopher who died about 10 years ago. Can you remember Gold?
Yes.
Yeah. He came up with that idea, saying you've got one mechanism which is going to be science and sort of reason and so forth, and the other side is belief and religion. And it's an artificial distinction. You
can argue that, sure.
Yeah, sure. And I would argue this as follows. I mean, if it was a different field of science,
It can be religious and it can be scientific as well.
of course. Let's say it's a completely different field of science, like chemistry, for instance. You could be as religious as you like, whether Muslim or Christian or whatever. And most atheistic scientists shouldn't have a problem. It's only where it goes to a very small aspect of science, but it becomes it's inflated so large, which is about our religions. That's when the problem starts. That's when they say no.
Contention there.
That's where the
Look, some people are evolutionary biologists and they're religious, and they believe in the theory of evolution and the process of differentiation of organisms. Some others don't believe that, but they're also religious. And that's where the contention is, because the scientific consensus, although not always right, consensuses aren't always right, but in this case there's a big burden of evidence put forward.
Okay, but
to say that this isn't true, it's not fair, because the evidence is very strong.
Actually, sorry, can I just say, when you are making this distinction about the evidence being overwhelming and the outright dismissal of that particular evidence is unfair or unjust.
Yeah, the reason I say that is because the evidence works in tandem with other pieces of evidence.
Right,
the point is that they fit together very well in terms of how we can explain the process of, particularly the natural selection process and the mutation process.
Yeah,
when leads to the differentiation.
No problem. When you were using words, I was just thinking about it. When you say natural selection, what is the scientific definition of that?
Well, I don't know what the scientific definition is, but my definition is that...
Sorry. The scientific definition should actually direct you as to whether the truth of a contention is valid.
Okay, well, the way I understand the scientific definition, I'll say it that way instead, is that an animal or an organism or a living organism that is more suited to, say, an environment than another organism would be. They are more likely to survive, pass on the genetic information, reproduce themselves, and those that aren't able to survive, over time, will diminish in number and eventually possibly go extinct. That's the best way to put it.
Right, I can agree with that, and it sounds reasonable. However, if you take those two animals, if both of them have the same genetic fit, how do you determine which one is weaker?
The same genetic fit?
Yes.
There's an element of chance in it. I'm not saying that.
All right, okay.
Absolutely.
If there is an element of chance, then we are using evidence that is not definitive.
No, it is definitive. I'll tell you why. It's because we're talking over thousands of generations.
No. That certainly didn't sound like.
We're talking over thousands of generations of animals. Over time,
sorry.
The effects of chance are great.
Sorry, brother. I'm Shabir. You are
Jay.
Well, I'm not. I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is going back to the source point. Yeah. As an example, are you familiar with Drosophila melanogaster?
No, I'm not.
Fruit flies.
Fruit flies, yeah.
Yes. Now they were interfered with.
I heard about this.
Yes. Now. Do you know this mutational element you were talking about? Well, that is what was done with them. Because they reproduced very, very quickly, it was easy to do that. But they did that, and you had so many flies that were born with all sorts of deformities. What the researchers then did was they left the fruit flies to their own devices. And after a few generations, they were back to normal fruit flies. Now, the question therefore arises is, when we talk about mutations being beneficial, where do we draw the line or the distinction between a mutation being beneficial and a mutation being destructive?
Okay, this is a really good example, because a lot of people mention this, and I spoke with the other gentleman here before he left.
Sure.
He was saying the same thing. He's saying, well,
if we can restrict it to the fruit flies.
The fruit fly is in a controlled environment, and if you're inducing mutations within that fruit fly, then you don't know the consequences of that mutation. Just like genetic engineering. For example, if you look at, say, BT corn.
Sorry, brother. Jay, the consequences of the mutations are not the issue. The issue is that experimental elements were involved, which is correct, but they were to determine whether mutations in the real world actually occurred. So what they did, they, as you rightly put it, artificially or interfered with the natural mechanism. Yeah. The definition of natural we haven't actually, we are just going to take as an accepted
That's why
fact.
I would say that it disqualifies that study from the natural process of mutation, because it's induced from an external.
Excellent. Well, if that is the case, on what definitive basis are you establishing that it was the mutational element that caused all the changes?
Because you can see you assume through things like organisms like bacteria or viruses that say with bacteria, for example, they've grown a resistance to some antibiotics that we have.
But those
very
absolutely,
and they've changed in terms of the genetic.
I can agree with
that's
that.
One mutation, that's example.
Human
beings. For
is
example,
it a mutation though?
It is a mutation.
How do we know that?
Because it's not a natural occurrence. It's been induced through the introduction of antibiotics.
Now wait a minute.
And they.
Yeah, if the vehicle has the necessary arsenal within it, within the program, is it a mutation?
But it's not within it already. Because
How?
to say that's within it,
No.
it's to presume that the bacteria knew that Fleming was going to create antibiotics, and then it's going to be.
Not at all, not at all. If, for example, you have got genetic switches, yes? You take a multitude of elements, as soon as they come in, the switch automatically switches. Now, you see the problem here is this, that we are talking on a speculative basis.
What you mentioned is epigenetics. It's a completely different study.
But there you are.
Yeah.
But having said that, you take it a bit further, the control tests were being made to establish the validity of the suggestion that it was beneficial mutations. However, if you take it a bit further from the discussion that you are having, yeah? The brother was trying to point out a change from species to species, okay? You on the other end was saying, wait a minute, you can't do that. The changes are so minute and over such a long period of time that you won't see these, major differences between the species. I assume that is what you are saying.
In a lifetime, yes.
Yes.
Lifetime you cannot.
Okay. Now, the problem then arises this. When you talked about Homo erectus, yeah, these are hominids, okay, and as you said, they are bipedal, which is fine. But the evidence that we are assessing is leading us to a particular conclusion based on our interpretational element. Is that not correct?
Based on the interpretational element?
Yes. For example, let's take one classic example that we are using today. How do we know that a particular hominid is closer to Homo sapien? What was the determining factor?
Determining factor of that?
Yes, to determine whether this is closer to the pungids, that's the ape world, or to the hominids, or the human Homo sapien.
The characteristics, through the bone structure, through the skeletal structure.
But the bone structure has to have a definite model already to measure against.
The model is Homo sapiens, us, because we're trying to figure out what we do.
There we are. So the one previous to the Homo sapien, how did we determine whether this one is a direct descendant?
I'm not sure how they determined that, but
so on what
the characteristic, that's the main thing.
I see.
I work off the character. I don't know the specifics.
Right, I see.
But I ask people to use the rationality and look at the characteristics.
But I am using the rationality, and I'm asking, if we are not aware of the details within what we are viewing, how can we formulate a reasoned conclusion?
Because you don't need to know the specific details all the time.
Excellent.
Sometimes you can look at something and say, well, I can see a similarity there.
Okay, let me ask you this, brother. I understand. Sahelanthropus cadensis. Are you familiar with that?
The Greek term. What's the
right.
English language?
Okay. Let's do it this way. This is a particular fossil, which the paleontologists suggest is the closest relative to the Homo sapien.
Okay.
Why? Because the apes in general, yes, the area where the backbone goes in and the spinal cord, okay, is slightly curved, okay, in the apes. But in the human beings, it is straight, yes? The foramen magnum. Now, I'm not just using these and bringing them up. It is to show that, look, if you are not familiar with the details, you are going to misinterpret the big picture completely.
Sure,
so now it can happen. Now, not only that, I'm just using that as an example, yes? So you have cadences, but that is based on a skull. And the paleontologists will tell you, look, we cannot definitively say that this is to be used as an example in order to do that, we need the knee bones, because the knee bones will give us an idea of their bipedality, okay? So the problem, right, that is fair, isn't it? Now, if you go back to that little mouse you were talking about, I think it was the Plesiadapis, yeah?
Yeah.
In South America, is that the one you were talking about at the start?
Sorry, say that again. What was it?
The little rat you talked
Okay, yeah,
about.
sure, yeah.
Is it the one in the South American jungles?
Perhaps, yeah, I don't know.
What do you mean perhaps you don't know? So
was
what were
talking
you
about the-
basing all your information on?
Because I was giving the example of
All right,
animal
I
that was
see.
small
Sorry,
that
Jay.
survived in dinosaurs.
Right, yeah. Right, I see. Yeah, but what I would suggest, brother, you see, the devil is in the details, pardon the pun, okay? But if you look at the details, they will definitely give you a different picture. Now, I'm familiar with the subject matter, and one of the things that comes across is this. Number one, we use words to convey a particular meaning. The word science, what does it mean?
No, actually.
Now there you are, there's a start for you, Jay. Yeah? The word actually means knowledge. Yeah? Now, if it means knowledge, okay, should you look at knowledge as a whole to determine a particular method of interpretation, or should you restrict it simply because the majority of the people have decided this is all we will restrict the word to?
Of course not. That's what science is so good, because it means that you look for your own mistakes. That's the
But
whole point.
science-
You hypothesize something, and people try to break the hypothesis.
Now look at this, Jay.
That's the idea
You have just taken the classic route, despite me having just told you that the word science actually means knowledge.
Yeah.
Now, if it means knowledge, should you exclude knowledge of any kind?
No, look, the scientific
You shouldn't.
Method, the scientific method
That's
is
different.
from science.
Exactly,
Scientific
but
method
can you
is used
see?
in science, though.
Now,
That's my point.
I agree
Right
with
or
you, Jay.
wrong, whether the word means knowledge or not.
Yeah.
The scientific method is used to deduce our
I
theories
agree,
and
but you
understand.
will notice that every time you are having the conversation, you use the word science only, not the scientific method. What does that show? It shows a particular mindset. I don't mean it in a... You see, if it was semantics, yes, and it didn't have a consequence to the thinking of the individual, then I agree with you. Yes, but that is not the case. You
No,
see,
I think
and
you understood what I was saying when I was mentioning this.
maybe, but I can't speak on his behalf. However, Jay, as you rightly pointed out, you see, you look at the details. Yeah, as you said, you won't look at the details, but I would suggest you do exactly that, because it is the details that will determine whether the narrative that is being given out.
I'm not saying the narrative is 100%.
No, of course not, and I know you are not saying
like,
that.
The characteristics
Yes.
are what I say is important.
Exactly,
I think
but
the
now...
things that are
Yes.
obvious
Yes.
are obvious sometimes. If you look at a monkey or look at some sort of ape or anything, you look at them, you can tell that there are some similarities between us and them. Whether they've got the opposable thumb and these different things.
Yes.
There are similarities between us and them.
They
Like
are.
it or
However,
not,
however, as the brother was pointing out, yes, there's a relationship of the cucumber and the human being, as he was saying. Yeah, there is.
But that's
Okay.
not, that's something that
However,
you have to look at scientifically. But
yeah, absolutely.
If you look at it visually,
Yeah.
you can see that.
Absolutely.
Genetics isn't an exact science. So
No,
far.
no,
It's
it
still
isn't,
very
it
new
isn't,
science.
it is-
So to say that because we're related to the cucumber, we're the same.
No, of
The
course
point is
not.
that it's all
No.
about the
However,
visual
you see, the difference here is this. If you look at the analogous bones they talk about, okay, we are told that we were fish at one time. Yes. Why? Because there's a tiny little bone somewhere in there that looks pretty much like our bone. 1 + 1 is 2. No problem. Okay. But is that definitive evidence?
definitive
On a
evidence?
scientific basis, yes. Is that
Scientific basis?
It isn't.
In terms of what? Sorry, that idea that we're
Yeah, in determining that this is the conclusion, definitively.
It's not like one
No, it
evidence.
isn't. No,
It's a
I'm
whole
looking
range of
at.
evidence. That's why I was
Well,
mentioning to the gentleman that
when-
you have to look at things in their entirety.
Now this is,
Counting them out of
Jay,
context.
you're absolutely right, but that is exactly what I'm asking you to do. That look at the evidence in its entirety in the details. You see, for example, I will tell you, for 30 years, there was a missing link that was announced worldwide. Have you heard of Piltdown Man?
Yeah.
Milk down man.
Piltdown Man, have you heard of it?
Built down man.
Piltdown Man.
Elaborate, maybe I have. I don't know if the name.
This was supposed to be a transitional fossil between the apes and the humans. Yes? For 35 years, scientists all over the world accepted it,
Oh, yeah, yes, I know what you're talking about. Absolutely.
Piltdown
Yeah,
man.
of course, yeah.
but then it turned out to be a forgery.
Okay.
Now, in all honesty, Jay,
Yeah.
what kind of scientific analysis was undertaken for 35 years to determine whether it was a fake or not?
It's a shame. It's a shame. That
No,
that
it may
happened,
be
of
a
course.
shame. However, it does show one thing though, that we are all prejudiced. We have proclivities. All of us do. Absolutely. Now, this is where, yeah, exactly. Now, what I would suggest, Jay, I mean, any kind of information to me is valuable information. Its value you will determine by looking at other things, as you rightly pointed out. But my suggestion would be, look at all the evidence. For example, you use the word natural selection, or the phrase rather. Yeah, it isn't only about natural selection when you look at evolution.
That's why I was trying to tell him that.
I understand.
The species changes, how does that happen? That's why I always tell him you have to look at the entire context.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's about the mutations.
Yeah.
It's about artificial selection. It's
exactly. There is
all
much.
Yeah,
all these do. But that is on a general level, okay? Because when you come down to the details, if you are not familiar with the details, then one is going to wonder how you have formulated reasoned conclusion. So, like I was just discussing with you about all the examples I use. Now, one of the things...
Doesn't necessarily disprove evolution, or does
No, I wouldn't even say something like that. What I would say is, look, the crux of the matter is this, that, for example, Homo habilis, Australopithecus afarensis, what is the relationship between the two?
I'm not sure, but I know that they look the same, and I know they have similar DNA structures.
Excellent. So you know they look the same.
They are quite similar in terms of body.
Brilliant. So you are suggesting to me that they had full skeletal evidence.
Not for all the different.
So how do you know they all look the same?
Because they have, for example, they might have the same tibia, similar shaped tibia, or they might have the similar skulls.
Yes.
They're bipedal.
But you see, and you rightly pointed out, Jay, and this is a bit of an error as an elder, I would say to you. You know, when you use that image, yes? Have you heard of Siva Pithecus?
Siva Pithecus?
Yes. No. You haven't. Okay. Ramapithecus. You haven't heard of all these? Okay. Well, these was allegedly, yes, fossils that had a relationship with Homo sapiens. Okay? And the drawings and the paintings are spectacular. You see them, you think, wow. It was all based on a small bone. How did they develop the whole picture of this particular relative of ours?
So if I saw that, I'd have said, well, that's probably an exaggeration because they have one bone.
It would only be an exaggeration if you went into the details to determine whether that was the case or not.
Yeah, sure, but
that's what I'm trying to say to you.
I mean, that's the exception that proves the rule.
No, it isn't, because there are thousands of fossils that are attributed to the human lineage.
I know there are a lot of dinosaurs that they've got a couple of bones and they decided to make a whole dinosaur out of it.
Yeah, but you see, now where is the detail? It is when you look at the detail that's a different picture starts emerging. You know, Professor Coyne wrote a book, Evolution is True, Jerry Coyne. I don't know, have you read that?
No.
Right, okay. Yeah, there are many books that have been written in which there is a particular emphasis on evolution being true. Then you have to, in all honesty, to dismiss something or to accept something, one has to assess the detail.
So the burden of proof.
Yeah? No, it's not about the burden of proof. That again is jumping the gun. Basically what I would mean by that is, look, if I say to you, Jay, I am your uncle. Okay. Would you doubt it?
Highly, yeah.
Why?
Because I don't know who you are. You don't look like me, so genetically I find it highly unlikely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So are we related to the fish?
Are we related to fish?
Yes.
In terms of our structure, yeah.
Genetics?
Genetically, yeah.
So am I your uncle?
No, but we're related as human beings, yeah.
But can you see?
No.
Technically,
that's a little trap.
no, not at all. No, my brother. No. It's just. No. It wasn't a trap. It's just to say.
We are genetically related. We're human beings, you know.
No, absolutely, brother. Yeah, no. But basically, what I mean by that is, look, how you view something can actually change in a split second depending on the kind of wording one applies. Yeah.
That's
now,
a sleight of hand with your language, you know.
Yeah, that's why I exposed. No, I didn't ask you questions.
No,
I was just carrying on with the discussion.
Yeah,
that's all.
I want to ask, if not that, what else? That's the best question I have, because
excellent.
We have all of this evidence that we have accumulated over hundreds of years. If not that, what else do we have that tells us about us as human beings, about this planet, about the history of our race?
I have no problem at all. You see, the distinction I made earlier on.
One more thing. Sure, I can accept
You know, you can debate with me and I can accept that there are mistakes here, there are incomplete fossils, there are all these different things that might jeopardize the integrity of an argument.
Yes.
Fine.
Yeah.
It's an argument. There's an argument.
Absolutely.
But you see, what else do we have?
No, here is the difference.
And it's developing as well.
No, I agree. It is absolutely.
Changes, that's a beauty.
I agree. You see, the difference here is this, yeah? There is the evidence and there is the interpretation of the evidence. My contention is with the interpretation of the evidence, not the evidence itself. Because as you have just rightly pointed out, the end game has not occurred yet. There are a huge amount of evidence to be unearthed as yet. Yes?
Sure, yeah.
So, it's at this current moment in time, it is the interpretation of the evidence that I am addressing. Yes, and that is why I'm constantly pointing to the details. Yeah. Sure. So, for example, Professor Cohen, one of the examples he uses, and especially Professor Richard Dawkins, he uses the example of this particular nerve, the recurrent laryngeal nerve. Are you familiar with that?
No.
Right. Okay. Fine. He uses that as an example to show if there was a creator, he was pretty thick, as far as they were concerned. Okay. But you look at that example and you think to yourself, wait a minute, this is not being addressed the way it ought to be addressed. Yes? However, taking that a bit further, you know, when you were saying that, look, there isn't evidence for a creator, or no compelling evidence for a creator, whatever, yes?
I say there isn't evidence for or against. I say it's on the realm of science for that.
Right. Now,
you can't use any evidence.
Now, there you are again.
Try and determine that.
And you know what? You hit the nail on the head. You just said it is not the realm of
science.
And what does the word science mean?
It's on the realm of the scientific method instead of science. Because you say science is not
now, excellent. I'm so glad. It's not chicanery.
Yeah.
It is actually true, because when you use the scientific method, you are also going to tell me that it is not absolute.
The scientific method?
Yes.
As in it's not absolute in terms of its conclusions?
No, not only that, in terms of how it is formulated.
Of course, I'm sure there's things.
It's not, is it? So
how? It's the best that we have.
Now wait a minute. It is only the best because we aren't considering something better.
Of course not.
So shouldn't we be considering something better, possibly?
Well, please hypothesize.
No. Here I'm telling you, it is very simple sometimes. Sure. Yes, the scientific method is merely a tool for you to establish certain things. Yeah, as we all know. Yeah, as we all know, that science, the way it is understood today, okay, looks at one thing. Can we look at the evidence? Can we assess it? Can it be falsified? Send it for peer review and all the usual, yeah? However, that cannot be applied to evolution per se.
I agree, because it's not something observable.
And now, exactly, but that means it is outside the realm of the scientific method. And if that is the case, should we equally dismiss it like we dismiss God because it's not within the realm of the scientific method?
Evidence, that's the thing. There's physical evidence.
There you are. You see, science doesn't only, the way we understand science, doesn't only rely on physical evidence, does it? Yeah, it doesn't. But as Professor Dawkins said, it is information that is gleaned and all the evidence is assessed and the best inference is drawn.
Yeah.
What does the word inference mean?
Inference, something that you say based on something else like evidence or...
Exactly. And there's a possibility that tomorrow some new piece of evidence will come along and this will be overturned. So,
I would say that's the thing, with big theories like evolution, which have been kind of proved in terms of how, say, bacteria that have very, very short life cycles, or like mosquitoes or other animals, you can verifiably show mutations and changes in an organism.
Well, actually, have you got any definitive evidence for that?
Yeah, I can give you artificial selection.
Well, artificial selection is not what you just said about bacteria. Okay. However, you are right. What I would say, absolutely. But my suggestion would be on this: should we not possibly also consider controlled evolution?
Controlled by? Sure.
Not controlled by. I just said controlled evolution. Isn't there a possibility? It doesn't. Why? Now look at this. We are looking at observable evidence, aren't we? Yeah. Although we know that the theory itself doesn't have that kind of evidence. It is the best inference that has been drawn from the available evidence.
Sure.
That's what it is, okay? I don't have a problem with that. What I'm saying is, look,
Can it be
you
controlled?
said, is there an alternative? I'm saying, is there a possibility of controlled evolution? Now, what does the word control mean? It means different things to different people, okay?
By humans,
There
by
you are.
animals,
You see, it can be
by other extraterrestrials, by
extraterrestrial, by a being that is not seen. There is a possibility. If we can think of the idea, we can
Think of the
posit
idea,
it,
and it's a
we can
possible
dismiss it, but it should be dismissed on a rational footing. As we have just found, we can say one thing about a particular subject matter, but when we assess it a bit deeper, we suddenly realize it's pretty much the same as the other one that we are dismissing. So on what justifiable basis are we dismissing it?
Because the idea that someone else is controlling it, that we can't see, that we can't hear, that we can't speak, isn't in the realm of science, because you cannot know more.
Are you
about
using
it.
the word science again?
Yeah, knowledge.
You mean the scientific
Knowledge.
method?
No, science. I mean,
Right. If you use excellent,
science, because I
excellent.
know what
That's
you're
good. That's good.
You
Yeah.
said
You see,
science means knowledge.
absolutely.
And because
Now,
something like an omnipotent God, especially in the Islamic tradition, you cannot know God. So he's not in the realm of science.
now,
So there's no point.
No,
in
not at
science,
all.
Because you can't know about it.
well, that can't be true, can it?
I'm
Because
using the same.
absolutely,
little sleight of hand
it
there.
can't be true.
You can't learn about God.
No,
you
no.
can't know about God.
How do you know that?
Because you said unknowable, unseeable, powerful.
Did I use any of
all-knowing.
those words?
You said unseeable.
Did I use any of these words? No, I
unseeable
didn't.
God. You said unseeable God.
I
You said
didn't.
unseeable. You didn't
I
say
didn't.
that.
I
An
said
unseeable being.
no. Yes.
didn't say that.
I said a being that cannot be seen.
Yeah, so
okay.
unseeable being.
But
I'm
you
saying the
you
same.
added the rest.
Okay, an unseeable being.
No. Then
does
you
that
came with
mean?
omnipotent. Look, here is the point though. If knowledge leads you to a particular conclusion, should you not assess the knowledge?
Okay.
I was. My
I-
family is
Jay-
speaking
Jay.
English, and you come here.
Jay,
No,
I
don't change. You always stay as you are.
yeah, brother. Yeah.
It's the life you lead, another creed you profess, man. It's the life you lead, another creed you profess. It's the life you lead, another creed you profess.
Anyway, Jay, very quickly, yeah. You see, if there is knowledge about this being, then logic dictates that we should try and obtain that information. Yes, I know. I need to fly as well. I've got a 5-hour drive. Yeah. You need to access that information to see whether there is any validity in that information. Yes. If what we do, and unfortunately the majority of the people do, if you outrightly dismiss something, you will never learn properly. Because it will take you 20, 30, 40 years before you realize, wait a minute, I should have done that. Yeah. Now I have no problem. Like I said, we were discussing evolution. I went into a bit of detail. Yes, it's a vast subject matter. Okay, and we can be here for a long time. But I know that if I am going to discuss a matter, then it is only fair and proper that I familiarize myself with that information so that we can discuss it appropriately. Now, unfortunately, the majority of atheists, agnostics, or people who can't be bothered sort of thing, yes, the moment the issue of a creator is mentioned,
Yeah, sure,
they all go funny in the
don't
head.
do that. I'll tell
Yes?
you my beliefs are. I
You've got
don't
1
find
minute.
I don't,
And then I'm going.
I don't find. Okay, I'll tell you what. I don't see how you can theoretically justify a personal God.
Jay.
Because that's what it means to be monotheistic or to be
Can I
part
have
of
a
the
card?
Judeo-Christian Islamic tradition.
Jay, I can tell you now, that's my card, that's me. Yes?
Your hair brings
I
you
look
back.
more handsome than the writing here. It's his fault. But I can assure you, Jay, yes, if we have a conversation, yes, on the subject matter of the creator, I can sincerely say to you that you will come to a rational conclusion there is a creator.
Sure. Okay. That's
My email is there. Let's go for it.
If you're here next week, we can have the same conversation again.
Unfortunately,
You're here
Jay,
next week.
I come once every 4 weeks, 6 weeks, because we come from over 200 miles away.
What
From Blackburn in Lancashire, that's near Manchester.
are you doing here, man?
Did you just say, oh my God? Exactly.
Jay, do email him though. Do email him.
Yeah, please do, Jay. I mean this as a brother. Yeah.
Sure, man.
If there's anything,
you haven't shouted over me, you
have
haven't
a-
done anything like that. We've had a
No,
nice
no, absolutely. That's what
had a
it's
laugh,
all
that's
about.
okay.
That's exactly. It was a pleasure. Please do forgive me if
pleasure,
I
thank
have said
you.
anything
What's your name again?
untoward.
No, you haven't been
Shabir.
Shabir,
It's
yeah.
there.
Oh, awesome.
There.
Shabir, there we
Yeah.
Jay.
It was a pleasure meeting. do drop me an email. Sorry?
Juman is my full name.
Ja-
Juman.
Juman.
Juman, yeah.
MashaAllah, what a nice name. What are you changing it to J for? You want to start jaywalking?
That's what happens. If there's people everywhere.
Oh,
what's your
right,
name?
I know.
Sorry, I can't hear you, can't hear you. So it helps. You know?
No.
Help out.
Excellent, excellent, brother. No, do drop me an email. I love talking to people like you, seriously. Yeah? Drop us an email. And I am prepared to answer any question you throw at me. Even which girl you need to marry. No problem.
Do one thing, you know the subject matter, put your name on there so he knows it's you,
Yes,
okay?
yeah.
Because he
yeah.
gets a lot of emails, so if you tell
Yeah.
him it's you, he'll look at it.
Yeah, excellent, Juman. Look after yourself, my brother, yeah? Look after yourself. Absolutely, likewise. And you too, bye-bye.